Hi, and welcome to today's episode. Today we have Patrick Messenger, somebody that I've known for well over a decade. We used to actually work together, but we didn't really know each other. And it's just been in the past few years that we've gotten to know each other a lot better through social media and conversing. And I wanted him to share his journey because in the past few years, his life has transformed so profoundly, and he's having such a positive impact on so many other people without him even being aware of it. We talk about his addiction in his teens and early 20s and how he moved away from that and found a new love with running, with nutrition and veganism, and just personal growth. And what I love about his story, and we're going to get into, is just all the small little things he's done to change his life, to live a happier, healthier life. So we get into that and so much more in today's chat with Patrick Messenger. Hi, I'm Serge. I'm a husband, a father, a technical sales rep, and I'm also the founder and project developer of the IAFM League, a personal development league for men. And one of my missions is to give men the chance to have fun and challenge themselves while building consistency and growth in their lives. And this is my podcast. Here I'll speak with everyday men, just like you and me, to discuss their struggles, their successes, their passions, and desires to becoming the best version of themselves. So thanks for joining and welcome to the IAFM podcast. Hi, and welcome to this episode of the IAFM podcast. I am extremely excited for this call. It has been Patrick and I have been talking for years. We've known each other for over a decade through a previous company that we used to work for, but it's really been in the past few years that we've developed a relationship and friendship through social media and through just communicating online. And I am so happy and excited for this call because Patrick's story and his positive message is so inspiring. And that's why I want to do this and share this with everybody watching. So first of all, thank you, Patrick, for being here today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Serge. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but thank you you were actually pretty influential in the early parts of my own physical fitness journey. Back in the days when you were doing all the beach body stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that I would have ever guessed that I would have been involved with something of that nature, but it was actually really, really helpful in just kind of getting
Cool.
my butt in gear. So thank you.
Yeah, hey, it's my pleasure. That was when I would run like group challenges and monthly challenges, and that in a way, it's funny. I'm glad you bring that up because that is, even though I let go of that, it's how I started doing these the IAFM League, developing that. So I was like, man, I used to do those challenges and I had so much fun running them, and so that's kind of many years later started developing this. But I appreciate that. I remember you participating in them, and I think you won one of them at some point. So
Yep.
that's awesome. So what I want to cover is, I'm talking about the positive message you're sharing, the inspirational stuff, your journey. And I want to talk about how that's transitioned from the Patrick that I knew of or met 10 plus years ago. For those of you watching, we used to work for the same company, and our relationship was just, so you were different. You were in the States, I was in Canada, and we had different roles. So we knew of each other. We had talked and we had met, and you came to our wedding, which was awesome. But I didn't know you. I honestly didn't really know you. And watching your story in the past 5 years or so has been incredible. And I find that as time keeps going on, your message and sharing your vulnerability is so powerful. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you here and talk about that, because it's something that men don't share, and there's just not enough of it. So that's one of the reasons why I want to dive into that today. So one of the big things that, a lot of people who know you, they know you as this runner. They know you, you've been doing it for a number of years, but this is not something that you did 10, 15 years ago. This started like 5 or 6 years ago, right?
In 2017. Yep.
2017. So what
Um,
spawned that? What from going, what, I'm not, because were you involved in any sports or any other athletics or anything like that?
I cycled recreationally all the way from, when I finished college in whatever that would have been, 2008, 2009. I
Okay.
would get on the bike a handful of times each year. Some summers I might do 1,000 miles, other summers I might do 100 miles, right? There
Okay.
was no consistency, but that was about as far as I went in terms of cardiovascular fitness
Yeah.
for that, stretch of time. Um, there were a couple times where I would lace up the shoes and run on the elliptical or on the treadmill at the gym or something, but nothing ever consistent. The big catalyst I think for me was in I believe it was 2016. I had kind of started working out a little bit here and there. And I went on a cruise with Katie and some of our friends. And I just remember like getting done with that cruise and just feeling absolutely terrible, like physically, emotionally, mentally. And the
Okay.
majority of it was from all of the excessive food and
Mm-hmm.
booze that I
Mm-hmm.
consumed on that cruise ship. And
Yeah.
so I just remember being done with that. And within a few days after, I just kind of went through my mental Rolodex and just like, what's something that I can change? And I had done a handful of juice cleanses over the 2 or 3 years prior to that, and learned about benefits of vegetarian and vegan lifestyles.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
said, you know what? For the rest of this month, the month of May, I'm not going to eat any meat at all.
Okay.
And just kind of reprogrammed myself a little bit. And there was never anything hard and fast that says I'm going to be a vegan, I'm going to be a vegetarian. It was just like almost like just another 30-day challenge. Let's see if
Yeah.
I can do this. You know, but like a lot of things in my life, when I do those challenges, I go into it very open and just kind of see what happens. And I said, if at the end of the 30 days I feel great, I'll do it for the month of June. And if I
Right.
feel like trash, then I'll go back to eating my steaks and whatever else that
Yeah.
might be on my plate at night. So I felt really good after that 30 days and decided, probably within 2 or 3 months of that, that vegetarian lifestyle was the way for me. And during that transition, it was that summer where I actually started running 2 or 3 times a week, pairing it with strength training, and then really focusing on nutrition for the first time in my adult life. Um, and I can remember just being at the following year being at a friend's wedding. And so at this point I had basically 12 months of 2 or 3 runs a week that were just very recreational, just like
Yeah.
I want to go out and do this because it feels good and who knows what's going to happen. um, we went to a friend's wedding, and I can remember we were on a hike, and I decided to run up one of the hills. And I got to the top of the hill and just like very triumphantly was just like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Why doesn't anyone ever trail run? This is a thing. And then over the coming weeks, I learned that in fact, trail running was a very well developed thing
Yeah.
all over the world. And spur of the moment after that, I decided to sign up for a half marathon in
Wow.
that December. So it gave me about 3.5 months to train for my first half marathon. And I don't know, I fell in love. Literally on my way to Florida on the plane, I read an article in Runner's World magazine written by Bart Yasso, who was their chief running officer for 35 years.
Okay.
And all he did was travel around and run races and share his stories. And he had just a really, really just a very good way with words. Anyway, he talked about doing the Badwater Ultra Marathon, and there was just something inside of me that even before running my first ultra marathon or my first half marathon,
Yeah.
I made the decision that I was going to be an ultra marathoner.
Wow.
Um, and so
That's
it was
amazing.
just it stuck. It felt good. I kept running after that half marathon and just continuously, up the mileage. And I hired a coach and got
Mm,
more intentional with the training. But it still took me almost 2 full years before I actually completed my first ultra marathon.
okay.
It was in 2019.
Wow.
So
And it's amazing. What I love about that is, I think some people see, they'll see you now as this runner, this ultra runner, running these marathons, running these trails. And yes, there's commitment, there's dedication, there's focus, but what I love about it is you have to start somehow, somewhere. And it doesn't have to be running for everybody, but just something that you
right.
started recreationally because of how you felt. You made a change to your lifestyle, not that was forced upon you. It was like, I don't feel well. I don't feel well. I'm going to make a change. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm going to do it. And then you saw the benefits. You're like, hey, this is actually what feels good. I'll keep doing it, and then I'll implement something else, and that became a passion of yours. I think that's so important because now, and it's been a long time, that people are like they think they have to follow a certain thing to be fit or to live a healthy lifestyle, when it can
Yeah.
just be something that you're passionate about. It can be walking, it can be running, it can be doing CrossFit. But what I love about it just started organically. When you started running and even changing your eating habits, what did it do? Because I'm guessing, did it change your mental health, especially the running, or did that have an impact on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, I mean, running created a lot of good in my life. But I think one of the things that I learned early on in running is it is one, for me anyway, it is one of the most honest forms of not even just exercise, but just um, activity, behavioral habits. There was no running from my feelings while running, and that
Right.
could be the best thing, right? When you hit that runner's high that everybody talks about, right? You feel that, and you feel it in your entire body. But the same thing, like when you have a difficult run, or when maybe you ran a little harder than you anticipated, or a little bit further than what you anticipated, and you feel that hurt, um, you feel it in every bone and every muscle in your body, from your head to your toe. And I think that for me, coming from a place of alcohol abuse and addiction, and that for a long time, for close to 20 years, that was my emotional coping mechanism.
Mm,
All of a sudden, running kind of peeled that away and said, here's a different way that you can actually feel. You don't have to cover things up. You can actually get a little bit closer to it, but you can still have a coping mechanism that is much healthier than what you've learned,
yeah,
previously.
that's
Um,
awesome. I love that.
and there's nothing like it.
And so, how, if we can dive into that a little bit, the alcohol abuse, were you aware that you were in that state of that it was, whether it was an addiction or that it was detrimental to you, or was it for you, oh, this is a social thing, this is fun,
Um,
or was it both, or
I, yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, it's a little bit of both. Um, it's I would like to say, I mean, during my early 20s and before then, there's no chance in hell that I would answer that question as yes. Like there, I didn't have a problem. No addict has a problem, right?
right,
When they are in the throes of addiction, no matter what that is, that you're using at that time.
yeah,
Um, but in reflection, absolutely. When I was 23 and got my second DUI, and I had to go to alcohol, assessment, which was essentially this like 3 day, like sleep away type um,
mm-hmm.
uh, uh, I don't know, conference, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
At the end of that, I had to meet with a behavioral health counselor that specialized in alcohol and addiction treatment. And she said, she told me just flat out, like, you are an alcoholic.
Wow.
However, for me, I'm not a traditional alcoholic. I was never the person that needed to wake up and crack a beer or have beer or liquor every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I was a binging alcoholic, a
Okay.
blackout binger, and so she basically told me, she's like, hopefully you decide to stop, but you have to understand that whenever you make that decision to stop, that even if you stop for 30 years, that because of when you started drinking in your early teenage years, um, you still, like, if you have a drink at 60 years old after being clean for 30 years, you can still drink uh, an enormous amount of alcohol to the point where you could black out and you could hurt someone, you could hurt yourself,
Wow.
you could get behind the wheel of the car. I was always very good at being drunk and being sober at the same time, or at least have the appearance of being sober.
Right. Right.
And she attributed that to just drinking copious amounts at 13, 14, 15 years old, and then
Wow.
continuing that practice for basically, all of my teenage and early 20s, until I started getting in a little bit of trouble here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the first time in probably in my late 20s, where I really knew that I was still having issues, and I would be a little bit more intentional with, oh, well, um, I'm not going to drink for this whole month, or I'm going to wait until Sarah's and Emmanuel's wedding to
Yeah.
get drunk
Yeah.
again or
Yeah.
something. But it was almost like, a lot of us, we prepare for a vacation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so the alcohol was still there. It just wasn't as prevalent as what it was for those 10 or 15 years. But when I finally made the decision to stop drinking, which was in 2018, um, it was a very sobering, drunken blackout moment that for some reason I remember. It was in Las Vegas, and I was with a friend. We had bar hopped, and I can remember walking back to his car and asking him if he was okay to drive. And in my brain, I knew that he wasn't, but his words said that he was.
Yeah.
And the next thing I remember is I was in the hotel lobby and he was driving off again. And I think at that point in time, I had had enough sobering moments in several years' time that I just knew that was it. I came back from that trip, and my business partner and I, we had a dog that we had worked with, and that dog unfortunately died after training had occurred. And
Yeah.
so he and we shared a beer in the memory of that dog that I had
Okay.
been saving for several years, and that was it. And I woke up the next morning and I knew that was my last sip of
Wow.
alcohol, and that I was too mature. I was sober enough to know that I could never be drunk again.
Amazing. I mean, that's powerful.
So,
That's
yeah.
that's very powerful. So when you talk about, running as a way to a coping mechanism, um, versus alcohol as an example, when did that start to come about that you found it to be therapeutic? Was it from the very beginning, or did it evolve at some point? You're like, wait a minute, this is more than just helping me be in shape. This is helping me release things that
Yeah,
have been holding on to.
I think it probably took about a year for me to really understand and realize um, the mental benefit on a regular basis.
Hmm.
But I think part of that was I wasn't I wasn't running enough or training smart enough to allow my physical body to actually develop what was required to get to the mentally therapeutic portions of it, right? So it just hurt. And for some reason, I liked the hurt in that first year and kept doing it because it made me look better. It made me feel a little bit
Yeah.
better, but there was
Yeah.
no comprehension beyond that. Um, I think it was really once I started trail running. I think that's when I was able to see a little bit more of the the mental health benefits of it. And part of that, I think, is just being in nature.
Yeah.
Part of that is it is a much different workout because you're activating a lot of different muscles.
Hmm.
A lot of times, trail running is done at a much easier pace,
Right.
often involving walking. And so I think it allowed my brain the opportunity to slow down enough to
Mm.
let my body do the thing that it wanted to do, but allow me to get through some of that other stuff and just, be in the middle of the trees and, be with Mother Nature enough that it could kind of, I was able to think clearer once I started trail running.
So can you, I mean, that's awesome. And I walk my dog on, unless it's pouring rain or something, on a daily basis. And one of the things that I'm grateful for is the fact that we are outside. We are in nature. We are, because it is so, just even walking outside, if even somebody lives in the city, just to get outside, go to a park or something, it changes. You just escape, even if it's for 15, 20, 30 minutes a day. It's so impactful. Can you share a little bit about how that helped with your mental health? Uh, um,
Um, yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer for you.
yeah,
But in terms of, trail running in general, it is, for me anyway, it is a lot of time spent in nature with just me in nature. And when I'm out there and I'm moving, my brain is going, and sometimes I'm thinking about my cadence and my rhythm and the workout. And but it doesn't take long before that takes a back seat.
yeah,
And I think of, my 3-year-old self. I think of my 72-year-old self in the future. I think about, things that happened to me as a child. I think about past relationships, what I want to do with, my future life and daydream. And it just kind of snowballs in
yeah.
most of the time, anyway, the best way possible. But it allows me to just really get some really good thinking done.
Which is,
And then if I want
yeah,
to decipher thoughts further, I go. And if I want to just leave that thought on the trail, then that's where it stays.
cool. Well, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people, we get caught up in our thoughts. We get caught up in it and we create stories. I talked about this the other day with somebody else. We create these stories of ourselves or about other people or how we're going to interact. And so to have these moments, it's for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but just even going for a walk or being outside, it's a form of meditation. And
Absolutely.
you're able to disconnect. And it doesn't mean you're um, trying to let go of everything that's in your mind, to not think about anything. But like you said, you're able to process things what we don't do enough of. We're processing all this other our responsibilities in life. Okay, I have to go to work, I have to do this, I have to get groceries, we have to, the things like that we're not processing. How did that affect me when I had that conversation with that person, or why did that upset me when
Right.
that happened? What was the trigger behind that? And I think that's so important for us to do. So for you to have experienced that and now know the benefits, and I'm guessing the moments where you go, I don't really want to do this right now, I don't want to do this run, oh, I know I have to do 18 miles and I don't really feel like it. Part of you goes, yeah, but you know what's going to come. The how this is going to benefit you. There might be physical
Yeah.
pain, but the emotional, the mental gratification and benefits outweigh the physical pain that you have for a short period of time. So that's amazing. I love hearing that. So
definitely.
you start doing this, you start running, and at what point did you start sharing your story? You created like a website, created a blog, and you started sharing a bit of your journey. I want to dive into that a little bit and why you started doing that.
Well, I guess I would take it a couple steps back, a couple years prior to that. Um, I first started sharing my story with myself when my therapist, encouraged me um, to keep a daily journal, and it took 2.5 or 3 years of her persistence before I actually started that
Oh,
daily
wow.
exercise.
Okay.
Um, so I think that once I think it was 2019 and part of 2019 when I actually started keeping a journal. So at that point in time, I'm 2 years into running ish. I think that, once I was able to just start writing and sharing my story with myself,
Hmm.
everything else just kind of evolved from there. Um, I would like to think, or I know, I think of myself as a fairly gifted writer anyway. I always have. That has always been something that has been of interest since I think the first time I remember was probably third or fourth grade.
Oh,
Is
wow.
just like this is something that I enjoy doing, right?
Yeah.
And so in high school, it was poetry to girls I might be trying to court, or then I joined the rock band and writing lyrics for the rock bands that I was involved with, and then in college as a theater student, it was writing little tidbits of scripts and
Okay.
plays and stuff like that, that we could use during class and stuff of that nature. But then after college, it just kind of went dormant and stayed pretty dormant for probably 8 or 9, 10 years. Um, and so it's always been there, the desire to write. And I think that, everything just kind of came together. I started writing on a daily basis. In 2020, I increased and I started writing poetry again. I think writing and running both were two of the things that helped me navigate all of the COVID quarantine,
Mm,
everything. Like, I don't want to say it didn't affect me because it did, but I just felt way more equipped to deal with all of that was occurring in everyone's lives than
yeah.
what I would have been a year and a half or 2 years prior. Um, and so, through that rediscovery of writing, it led me to sharing some things just on my personal, like, social media pages. And First and foremost, it felt good
Yeah.
to me to just share, no matter what the outcome, no matter how many likes or hearts or comments or whatever. It just felt
Hmm.
good to share something that was close to me,
Hmm.
because that was not really anything that I had ever, not ever, but it was something that I had gone without for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Um, and so then, in running some of the ultras, the ultra marathons, and writing race recaps and race reports after those, I learned that I was really pretty good at it and really getting into the nitty gritty of, like, this is how great it can make you feel, but this is also how absolutely awful it can make you feel at the same time, and just kind of riding that roller coaster, but being very good and descriptive about it. Um, and I really don't even know what spurred me to sign up for the Chicago Marathon, other than in 2022, Ashley ran, and I just remember running all over the city of Chicago trying to follow her and meet up with her at mile 4 and then mile 8 and mile 12 and mile 18 and 20 and 22. And it was just fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a way to experience Chicago in a different way
Hmm.
than what I ever did when I lived
Hmm.
there. It was a
Okay.
way to rediscover Chicago as a runner, which was not who I was when I lived there. And it was a way that was very impactful in terms of the community that I had learned to love, in terms of, like, the running community,
Mm,
because it was a million runners or people supporting runners in that city, and it was energizing. It was peaceful and chaotic
Yeah.
simultaneously. It was beautiful. It was ugly. It was awesome. And I just kind of came away from that weekend and I was just like, I know I'm a trail runner. I know I'm an ultra runner, but I think I got to go run the Chicago Marathon. Um, and so I did a lot of research. There's a ton of charity organizations that you can choose to run for
Right.
through Chicago, and not every single big marathon is like that. Chicago has a huge, just a plethora of organizations, and um, uh, I got it down to two different organizations that really seemed impactful to me, and important to my personal cause. And NoStigmas mental health organization. Um, they were the ones that, once I sent those first couple of emails, when I got the responses, when I did the digging on their website and stuff, um, it just it just felt right.
Yeah.
And so I decided to run the 2023 Chicago Marathon or with the NoStigmas team. And it was through that stepping stone of, how can I do this in a way that is important to me, is close and personal to me, but also in a way that can help champion mental health equality for NoStigmas and make my journey to the Chicago Marathon a little bit more, honest, achievable, meaningful,
Mm-hmm.
all of those adjectives.
Yeah.
And so that's when I decided to open the blog, and I think that was in December of 2022. And then I started, just writing. And some of those things that I shared on that blog were things that I had jotted down in journals, 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And some of those things were me continuing to do the daily work and reflect and daydream and plan, and just share some of the things that have occurred in my life, share some of the tools and strategies that I use in daily life to increase my positive mental health, my physical health, my dietary nutrition stuff, um, all of it. And I think that overall, it felt really good to write it. And I think that even before I shared it, I knew it was going to feel good to share it.
Yeah.
And I from what I could tell, for the most part, it was well received and
Mm-hmm.
meaningful to, at least a handful of different people. And one of the books that I read earlier in the year, by John Joseph, there was something that he said about one of his books that was just really impactful in terms of what writing I was doing. And he basically said, I'm going to write this whole book, and even if this book only touches the hands of one human being and it makes a difference in that one human being's life, I've made a difference. I've done
Yep.
something good.
Yeah.
And so it just takes one person. And I think that in our society that is so driven by the amount of followers and likes and
Yeah.
the outcome on the surface, I think that was really, really helpful, to me, to just keep sharing your story. You don't know
Yeah.
who needs to hear it, and it's not important. They don't even need to tell you.
Yeah.
But that person that read it and that did something with it and decided to make a change in their life, it's helpful to them.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah. I love that. I love, and thank you for sharing. I was going to ask you how you got involved with NoStigmas. So thank you for sharing that, how that evolved. You're so spot on. I think people see, whether it's celebrities or influencers, and like you said, oh, they have 10 million followers. Who am I? What can I do? And that's what I love about what you're doing, is that there's no, hey, I'm doing this, hoping that it helps me in something else, like for monetary reasons, or for becoming, having so many followers or whatever. You're doing it because it, like you said, it feels good for you to do it, and it feels good to share. And as you mentioned, people will, I mean, this is why we're talking. This is why I wanted you on this, because your message is so important and it's so impactful and it's inspiring. And it's not something that you thought, I'm going to create this blog because I'm hoping that, it'll get recognized by other people. And that's not why you did it. and that's the right reason to do it. Um, you know, when you and I want to talk a little bit about this. I mean, when you're the writing process, what I love about what you coming back to, because it seems so simple to journal something and to go for a run. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost too simple. And so for a
Right.
lot of people, I think we overcomplicate things. We go, to be happy, I need this, because that person has this, or that person has, as opposed to, wait, what makes me happy? And what helps me cope, or what helps me move through this? What helps me strive? And what I and the journaling I love because it's not something that is known as a masculine thing.
Mm-hmm.
We think of the Dear Diary. That's normally a little
The
girl
diary. Yeah.
writes in her diary, or as a teenager, writes in her diary. And as boys, we are not taught that. We're not taught,
Correct.
hey, write how you feel, write what you're grateful for, write how today went, if it sucked or not, or
Right.
celebrate writing down something so that you can go back, even if you don't read it ever again, that you can express this stuff. How, because you talked about how it had such a profound impact, especially with the running, and because you've always enjoyed writing, what would you say to somebody that has never done that before, has never journaled, who has never, doesn't think they're a good writer? What would you say is the first step? Because you were told by your therapist, do this, it will benefit you. And it took you a couple of years for you to do it. And then you're like, okay, I will. And then you're like, oh, now I know why. Um,
Yeah.
so what would you recommend somebody getting started? Like, how did you start?
I
Was it
mean,
just writing a half a page, a few lines, 10 minutes that you gave a timeline, or just free write?
you know, well, I mean, the first step is just go buy a journal and a pen that you love.
Yeah.
Um, like it sounds kind of silly, but it's the same thing. Like with running, like if you want to be a runner, go buy a pair of shoes. Like
Mm-hmm.
once you have something monetary, even be it a $20 journal, right?
Yeah.
You were a little bit more likely to engage in that behavior,
Mm-hmm.
even if just semi-regularly.
Mm-hmm.
After that, like when I first started journaling, holy shit, dude, like it just poured out of me.
Yeah.
I carried that thing around every single day. I wrote in between clients when I was still with Dog Wizard.
Okay.
I wrote, like I kept notes on what I was eating, how many bottles of water I was drinking a day. I kept notes on how each run felt. Like there was a lot. And to the point where, probably a little on the excessive side. And I was only able to maintain that for probably 3 or 4 months and then
Okay.
dialed it back in and regulated a little bit.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it has just been a morning. I've kind of gone back and forth, but my every single morning as I wake up, I make coffee and espresso. I drink a glass of water, and then as my coffee is cooling, I start either meditation or I start journaling or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And it generally is just a reflection on the prior day. This is how I felt.
Mm.
This thing happened to me at work. It was good, it was bad, it was indifferent. My spouse and I had this amazing time, or we had, a little bit of a bickering fight. We
Yeah.
had this great meal with these family friends and this, that, and the other. Sometimes it's not so much reflective. Sometimes it's excuse me, it's just the preparation for the day ahead. These are my 3 or 4 simple goals. So like more recently, I've been writing down my 4 daily goals of life, which is eat well, move your body, breathe, and hydrate. That's it. Those are the only 4 things that I have to do, and I feel successful.
That's
you
awesome.
know and so it just it's just like coffee is a jump start to my day,
Yeah.
the journaling, the meditation, it's a jump start to the day. It's a way to start out the day on a positive note. And I think, like anything else in life, the more times you experience a positive benefit from anything, the more your body, the more your brain attaches to that thing and say,
Yeah.
let's do that more.
Yeah.
Let's do that again tomorrow. Let's do that this evening. And it just, again, it just snowballs in the best way possible.
Yeah. That's,
So buy the journal, buy the pen, write, and let everything else come to fruition.
yeah. And I love that. I mean, I think you talked about um, it became excessive for a certain period of time, but it was probably because you had held in so much stuff for so many years. It was like, blah.
Yes, exactly.
And then going, okay, I've essentially let out most of what I want to let out. Now, how can I use this in a different way to help me reflect or to plan? Or, I mean, the things you're talking about, again, they're so simple. They're simple acts. And even those 4 daily goals, we take those things for granted.
Yep.
Whether it's breathing, hydrating, eating well. But it's just like, these are the things that I can control. And that gives you
Mm-hmm.
that gives you power. We often forget how powerful we can be because we go, I'm not able
Yep.
to do this. I won't get this done on time. This isn't working for me right now. And we forget that, oh, wait, I can breathe. I can hydrate. I can be physically active no matter what it is. And I can eat well. I'm in control of these things. I love just so simple because I think now more than ever, we're so bombarded by different ways we can improve our lives,
Mm-hmm.
improve our businesses, get more clients, get in better shape, have better relationships. That it becomes almost too much. It becomes too complicated, and
Yep.
or the things we go, okay, I'm gonna sign up for this, or I'm gonna get involved in this, but it doesn't work with our lifestyle. And it's like, I'm gonna do this,
Yep.
excuse me, this challenge, or I'm gonna sign up for this course. Oh wait, I didn't realize it was gonna take this much time, and now I have to sacrifice this and that. So that's what I'm loving that you're sharing, is that you've made it fit your life and create it as a lifestyle, which that you can keep doing long term. It's
Yep.
not the, okay, in the next month I'm going to get this done and it's going to fix everything. No,
Right.
that's not how
Yep.
that works.
Yeah. And I think that it's, you know, the daily act of journaling, is it's both, a place that you can, like you mentioned, especially I think more so with men, um, societally speaking, you know, it's harder for us to open up, to share our feelings, to be emotional, right?
Yeah.
Um, However, the journal
Excuse me.
is not judging you, right? And so even if you don't want to say, hey, Serge, I cried the other day because XYZ, right? If you don't want to be that emotionally open with another human being, it gives you a place that you can write the thing down. And then all you have to do is close the book. And even if you don't want to look at it again, you don't have to. You can leave it. You can leave the heavy things in there and it just stays, and I think that that's a really helpful thing for a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm got something stuck in my throat. Sorry. That won't go away.
Sorry to get you all choked up there,
Yeah.
Serge.
I might have to take a break, get a
We're
lozenge
just
or
two
something.
men crying on screen.
Two men. It'd be beautiful. It'd be beautiful. No, it's I love that point. I mean, you're right. You're I think that's why a lot of men don't express themselves. A, they don't know how to because they've never been taught, and afraid of being judged by
Mhm.
other people. How is my partner going to react? How are my friends going to react if I share this with them? And a lot of it, I think, men carry a lot of shame and guilt over things
Yes.
and don't want to admit that. They don't want to admit this is how I feel because I screwed up here, or I think I screwed up here, or I'm afraid of what they're going to think. Has that come into play with both the running and the when I do this, I mean like escaping while you're running, mentally escaping, and the journaling, has that helped you as well, or have you found that?
Um, do you mean that like it's gotten easier to share without the fear of judgment?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think that, certain things, the fear is still there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, any of us can just completely retrain, the other 37 and a half years of existence. But and again, I think that's why John Joseph's words in that book, those words were such an impactful thing for me, is like it's not about the masses. It's about the person that it can help. Even if you don't know that person, even
Yeah.
if that person and you never come into contact. Um, and so I think that if I can be of service to anyone, I want to keep sharing for that reason and that reason alone. Um, and if that's through journaling or through the blogging website or writing race reports, or
Yeah.
I think that the more running and again specifically trail running, like I've had these types of conversations with men of all ages, all ethnicities, all genders, and sexualities, like out there on the trail, and it
Mm,
just, you can open up and it just is what it is, and just like you can leave it in the journal, you can leave it in the pile of leaves, you can leave it in the weeds
mm,
right off the trail, and it doesn't ever have to be a thing. Like it can just be something that you expel and you share, and maybe it's heavy for you, but maybe somebody else is also experiencing or has experienced
mm-hmm.
something similar, or maybe they will experience it at some point in their life and they can benefit at that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a great point. You're part of you do run alone, but you'll also run as a group or in with a community. How is Because I've never run with a group of people before. I've ran by myself and trained by myself. Um, those interactions, uh, because you're all supporting each other and you're all at different levels, I'm guessing. Some are beginners, some are more advanced than others, some have been doing this for 20 plus years, so you guys are probably sharing your experiences. How do you get to a point where, and maybe it's just because you trust each other, that you're sharing some of these more personal vulnerable things? Is it something that was presented to you, or is it something that you just started doing with them? And when I mean presented to you, somebody else shared something to you and you felt, oh, if they trust me enough, then I trust them enough.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that. Most definitely is just that mutual respect and openness and willingness to share, um, with all parties involved. But I think it also goes back to what I said earlier: is for whatever reason, I find running to just be an incredibly honest behavior.
Mm,
And if I'm honest within my own body and mind with myself, it is so much easier to be honest with those around me,
yeah.
on the trail and then off the trail as well, without the fear of shame or judgment or whatever. And, we have also experienced, similar things that, maybe I disclosed something to someone and they did judge me, and that person is just like, oh, well, I'm done with Patrick now. And that's okay. Like you're
Yeah.
allowed to take that
Yeah.
information however you choose. But for the most part, it has been overwhelmingly positive. I
Yeah.
have formed more friendships through running in the last 5 years of my adult life than the first 10 or 12, 15 years of my adult life.
Hmm.
Um, and meaningful relationships,
Yeah.
people that I really care about on a personal level,
Hmm.
um, people that, it's not just about running like it
Yeah.
was initially.
Right. That's
chosen
awesome.
family, if you will.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you bring up that point, because I was talking to somebody the other day about that, and we were talking just about friendships and people that we've known for a long period of time, and that we might be close. Well, it can be a family member even, or it could be a very school, a friend from like elementary school. But then we realize, I don't know this person.
Right. Right.
Our relationship is superficial, or not superficial, but it's based on when we were kids, we were in the same class and we used to play video games and we used to just hang out because we had somewhat similar interests back then, and we just liked each other. But and I think especially for men, we don't share how we feel. We don't share our fears. We don't share our vulnerabilities. We don't share often our celebrations. The
Mhm.
highs in life as well, because as men we're taught to be stoic and be a man, walk it off, tough it out. And so we interpreted that as, okay, well then I'll just shut my mouth. And you know so I love that you share that, just doing this, being part of this community with other people who are maybe or maybe not experiencing the same things you are, but you have a common passion, that you've strengthened your relationships with people. It's so powerful, because that will also bring out happiness in your life, fulfillment, going,
Mhm.
wow, this person is doing this, or this person's having this impact on me, which is not, unfortunately, we're not taught that. We're not taught
Yeah.
to, in school, or even in a lot of sports. We work as a team, but you don't really get to know your teammates. And I love that you bring that up, and that you've been able to experience that, because that's something I've come to learn in the past few years, in my late 30s, now into my early 40s. And like, I like I we're friends, but I don't know what's going on in their life. Or I don't know what they went through. And it's because I've had people ask me, and it's helped me. It's helped my therapy of expressing, like, okay, I can trust this person, and it
Yeah.
feels good. And they might judge me, but they might not. And I got to get past this fear of how I'm feeling, even as uncomfortable as it may be. Um, so I love that you shared that, and you're experiencing that, and you're seeing the benefits of it. Again, it reinforces uh, all these little steps. This is what I've loved about this call so far. It's all these little things, these minor things, that have such a huge positive impact. And what I'm excited about for you is that, to me, it's just the beginning. A lot of these things you've discovered in the past few years, that's it, which is
Mhm.
awesome. So what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, in the next 5 to 10 years, as you become more aware of all these things, you become more accustomed, you expand, and all uh, these different worlds that you're, just recently. I mean, 5 years is long, but it's also not that long. So I love that. I'm excited. I'm excited for
Yeah.
you, and what you're also going to keep sharing, and because uh, I know you will continue, because it's had such a, as you mentioned, a positive impact on you, and just that one person you'd never know. The one
Yeah.
person you can. Has there been anybody in particular that did that for you? Whether it was somebody, a book you read, or you mentioned this one author that stood out, but was there anything, or was there like a combination of different things, like, that had an impact on me, that, and it could have been a negative experience as well, but was there somebody that stood out that you're like, thank you, thank you for that?
Yeah, there were three different authors that were memoir style, all related to running. So Charlie Angle and Running Man, that would have been the first book. Um, Rich Roll, Finding Ultra, and then David Clark.
Yeah.
And the first two, so I don't actually remember the two books of David Clark's off the top of my head. Um, but with Charlie and Rich, it was interesting because they were both, it was the same kind of thing. It was like they had gone through um, alcoholism, recovery, very much in AA, and just so open and honest about that being a very pivotal part in their, just, I guess, their whole life journey in
Yeah.
terms of turning from what was to what is. Um, but they were so good at sharing their stories, the good parts, the bad parts, the in between, all of the triumphs, all of the struggles, everything. And so, especially Charlie, I would say, in his book, and then following along with some of his social media stuff after reading his book, was just, there was just a different way that he was honest that I
Mm.
connected with. And I've been fortunate to have a few conversations with him over the years as well, which has been really
Awesome.
neat. Um, there, I don't know exactly what it is about him that is, a little bit alluring, but it's just the way that he shares his
Yeah.
journey. It's,
Hmm.
I apologize for my acts, but I don't apologize for sharing. It's just, it's honest, it's
Cool.
open, it's
Yeah.
raw. And then David Clark was so very different. The first time I read his one of his first books, oh, I hated him, absolutely hated him. But what I came to
Okay.
learn in reflecting was, it wasn't David that I hated. It
Mm.
was the qualities in David that that existed in me
Yeah.
that I hated.
Yeah.
And like I fucking bawled my eyes out several times during reading that book. I think it was called Broken Open, actually. Yep. Um, I mean, it just hit hard. It hit
Yeah.
really hard. And um, he actually, unfortunately, he passed away.
Yeah.
Um, and he had lots of physical ailments that continued plaguing his life. And even when he got healthy, when he became physically active, he became this world renowned ultra runner. And then he had back issues, so he started riding a bike. He rode a fat tire bike across the United States. Like, he did these
Wow.
epic things. Wow. He became an MMA fighter when the cardio stuff didn't want to do the same thing. And he actually went in for what was considered to be a pretty routine back surgery. I think he was just shy of 50, and he died on the operating table
Oh my
with
goodness.
just complications to the surgery. And so, um, after that happened, he was the first person that I did um, any type of run for, any type of
Mm.
cause for. Um, and he referred to himself as Superman, because that's how he thought of his newfound self after he
Mm.
discovered, himself post addiction.
Yeah.
He was severely obese. I don't remember, probably 350 pounds or more at its worst, and he came back to do all of these epic things. And so I called it my Superman challenge. And it was actually during COVID that he passed away. But it was just a 10-day challenge where I think I started it, like, I ran 3 or 4 miles the first day, and then I just incrementally went up 1 mile each day,
Hmm.
and ended up running something like, at that point in my running journey was kind of intense. It was 75, 77, 80 miles or something like that in 10 days time,
Wow.
which was a lot of mileage.
Yeah.
um, but it was in his memory,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It was just something where, for whatever reason, it was very impactful to me. It was a reason to get out of bed, and no
Yeah.
matter, like you'd mentioned earlier, like, no matter how much motivation I was lacking, I was doing it.
Hmm.
There was no question.
Hmm.
Like, I think it was actually even on day 3 or day 4. I woke up and was super, super tired from running and moving out, and I actually fell in my bedroom and cracked my back open on the corner of my bed frame. and it was incredibly painful. And I just kept running because that's what David would have done. You know,
Wow.
there is no excuse good enough to
Hmm.
not do something as simple as just putting your feet one foot in front of
Yeah.
another and just going out and doing something good for the cause of doing something good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so that was a pretty impactful thing. And then shortly after that was the first time that I actually ran to raise funds for any sort of charity, and that was for No Kid Hungry, I think is what it
Okay.
was called. And it was just funds that go into feeding the starving population in the United States. Children's
Yeah. Yeah.
fundage. So
That is
but those three
amazing.
individuals definitely, and there are still times where, especially when I am in the lowest of lows during a race or a hard training run, that those three people are whether they know it or not, whether they understand it or not, it doesn't matter in my
Hmm.
own brain.
Hmm.
Um, I am very connected to. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that anytime you have a little bit more reason when times get tough, especially, it makes the activity a little bit uh, more beneficial, more helpful, and that's again, and going back to the more present day, NoStigmas. This year it was a big why
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
A big answer to the reason or to the question why.
Yeah. No, that's thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. It's the idea of personal growth and personal development. I think uh, it's not seen in a positive way by everybody because I think we have to when you go to a bookstore and you see books that say self-help. I remember 15 years ago and I'm like, I don't need help. What do I need help with?
Right.
I don't need help. And then when I started discovering personal development, whether through reading or watching videos or listening to podcasts or being parts of courses and being involved in men's groups, things like that, just what you shared, the times that you didn't want, you thought of those people who didn't know the impact they were going to have on Patrick, but they did. And you're like, I'm doing this for me, I'm doing this for them, I'm doing this because he would have done it. um, I think that's so important for people who are not practicing forms of personal growth or development. It doesn't have to be, I have to read a book. It doesn't have to be, I have to watch a video. But when you start experiencing this and start seeing how, again, like you've talked about how it helps you, you become you get more and more and more involved. And what I love what you're sharing, the idea of, you've talked about this with the journaling, not being judged, which is what stops so many people, I think, from even getting involved or starting some form of personal development. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be, I am going to be a better person because of I'm going to read this book. It's what do I want to change in myself? Well, how do I want to? And now it's become for you something that is impacting somebody else, impacted you, and you're transmitting your experience through that to other people. And again, like you mentioned, you might not know who you have had a positive impact on, but you are. And running now for NoStigmas, it's even taking it to another level. So that's congratulations
Thank you.
on your the committing to this, committing to every little thing that you've done, and going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, no matter the pain, because you could have been like, nope, I'm going to close this book or I'm going to close this journal because I hate how it makes me feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to experience that. I don't, and that takes courage. That takes It's not just committing, it's not just willpower, it's not just motivation or inspiration. It takes courage to be able to do that. And I applaud you for that. And I applaud you for keep doing that. Because, and I can only speak from my experience, when we start doing that, the crappy things happen, but then you learn how to deal with it better, no matter, and they kind of start not being as crappy as they once were, or as we perceive them to be. Has that been something you've experienced through all this, that things are just easier to get through in a way?
Yeah, for the most part. And I think that like it's in the addict brain, right? It's in the throes of addiction, it's really easy to be addicted, right? And
Mm,
it's no different, right? It's just like I'm doing this one thing and it makes me feel good. So I want to do that next drug. I want to take that next shot. And it's your, but the
yeah.
flip side of that, and that's where I will argue that a sober addict is one of the most capable individuals in
Mm,
life because they are trained to be really good at behaviors, right?
okay.
It's just for what they were once using as what we are going to label as a negative behavior.
Yeah.
um, we can do just what you're saying. I can do a little bit of this, and that increases positivity in my life, right? I can
Yeah.
do a little bit of this, and I feel a little bit more love from my spouse. I can do a
Mm,
little bit of that, and I look and feel a little bit better in the mirror. Or, I can have this conversation with this person, and just the vibe that we have today.
yeah.
Like we're both increasing positivity in our day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just the same way that addiction can go the wrong way, you can use all of those same qualities for very positive things and it can go the right way. And it doesn't mean that I'm invincible or that anyone is invincible because we're doing a lot of things that we feel are good and right, but it,
Hmm.
it damn sure stacks the cards in our favor.
Yeah. Yeah. That's 1000%. And part of the reason why I love doing these now, and it's just a few times that I've been doing it, but each conversation that I have, I feel phenomenal afterwards, and I learn and I take away so much from it, and I go, oh my gosh, I want to, this is why I want to keep doing this and share people's stories and learn more from these people who are influencing others, and and influencing others in a way that is not, as you talked about, too forced influence. I'm just sharing what's worked for me, sharing what didn't work for me, and how I've moved through that. And um, going back again, I keep saying this, but I think it's so important is that it doesn't have to be complicated. Even if you've never been an
Absolutely.
addict, even if you've never experienced quote unquote difficult times to a certain extent, it doesn't mean that you have to complicate the life that you're living. We do that so easily. It's just we just unfortunately, and um, through all that we go, man, it's I can't be a marathon runner. If 10 years ago when I asked you, been like, hey, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be, you would have been like, are you
No
kidding
way.
me?
Yep.
And that's why I'm excited, as I mentioned, to see what the future holds. I want to just kind of finish up with this because you mentioned your wife Ashley, and did you guys meet through running, or was
We
it
did.
through? Okay, and
Yeah.
how has that relationship? Um, I mean, you got married. Was it last year or?
Yeah. Last
Yeah,
December.
last December. Okay, so you're coming up on 1 year. Congratulations. That's amazing. So,
Thank you.
what has this relationship, or what have you learned through this relationship that wasn't there in past relationships? Or what have you learned about yourself, or what have you learned about
Yeah. I
communication?
think that for me, it starts a little bit before Ashley and I's relationship. in that gap, Katie and I got divorced in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I bought a house in the woods, and I moved into the woods with all of my dogs and all of my dog training essentials. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what I was doing there other than I wanted a reprieve.
Yeah.
But it ended up being a very, very just positive, influential thing. It was the solace and solitude that I needed.
Mm.
Um, at no point in time was I looking. I was not on dating apps. I was not, actively searching for any sort of partner at all.
Yeah.
Um, and it was early July, no, late June of 2020. My friend that I had made, who was the office manager of a chiropractor I saw for almost 2 years straight, she sent me a message on Instagram and said, "Hey, one of my friends that I was running it with recently got divorced, and she's ready to get back into the dating life. And she said she wants, she's interested in running, and she's mostly vegan. And I thought of you, first and foremost. And so, if you get this message from this Ashley person, just know that this is the reason, right?"
Okay.
And Luann didn't actually know, but Ashley had already messaged me. And so I hadn't responded to Ashley yet. But after Luann sent me
Yeah.
that message, I was like, okay, so this isn't just a random spam bot
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like, this is a person that, is within that community.
Yeah.
And so at that point in time, I had gone through closing my business.
Mm-hmm.
I was selling my home that I had bought in the middle of the woods. I didn't know if I was staying in Louisville, if I was going to Ohio or Florida or Texas or Timbuktu. I didn't
Yeah.
know. And here comes along this person that's just like, "Hey, you're cute. We should talk." And so we talked, and we talked some more, and we talked some more. And for the first time in either of our lives in relationships, um, we ripped the band-aid off. In those first 2 or 3 days via text, we
Mm.
basically just said, "Here's all my shit. If you approve, we can keep conversating.
Yeah.
If you don't, have a good life."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think the thing that, like, other than just having a partner that
Mm.
is running and active and interested in so many things that are mutually interesting to each of us, um, from day one, it was just a different level of acceptance.
Mm.
Um, it was, "I can't solve your shit. You've got to do that on your own. However, I will stand adjacent to you as you solve your shit. And if you need a shoulder to cry on, if you need a hug, if you need a fucking cheerleader, let's do that part together."
Cool.
And Ashley has had, trials and tribulations of her own, all kinds of ups and downs. And so I think that it just was this culmination of mutual acceptance and respect of, it doesn't matter what the history was in your relationship or your life. This is who we are. This is what we've experienced. This is what we want out of life.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know, there was just, like I said, a different level of respect from day one than any of my other relationships. And I don't mean that in a condescending way
Yeah.
against any of those other people that I may have been with, because it wasn't their fault. Like, I wasn't even honest with myself in those
Yeah.
relationships,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why I started this whole answer to this question of, it was really about that 2 years of solace and solitude,
Mm.
because I had to reconnect with myself. That's why
Yeah.
running is so helpful. That's why therapy is so helpful. That's why veganism for me has been such an impactful thing. um, Trail running, I mean, you name it, all of these, the journaling practice, the meditation, all of these things have allowed me to be a better version of myself. And
Amazing.
ultimately, it has allowed Ashley and I to be better versions of us together.
I don't think of a better way that we can end this. uh, that's amazing. I want to thank you so much for this
Thank you,
chat.
too.
It was incredible. And where can we? I'm going to put this in the comments in the video. But where can we find you? You're on social media. Your blog as well. So share that with us quickly, and then I'll post that in the comments, the bio of the video. But where can we
Yeah,
find you?
so a lot of times when I do share, it's just on social media. Which on Facebook is just my first and last name, Patrick Messenger. On Instagram, I've become known as Louisville Vegan Runner because I'm a runner and I'm vegan and I live in Louisville. So there's that. And which also, after a couple of years of having that social media handle, that is what I decided to make the blog, the website blog
Yep.
as well, which is just LouisvilleVeganRunner.com. Admittedly, for the last several months, I have not done as much uploading to that, but I have continued paying the website monthly fee because I know that at some point I will come back to it. So,
Cool.
but also thank you to you because I didn't really know what to expect today, but it was fun, and you're actually really pretty fucking good at this, so you should
Thank you.
keep
I
doing it.
appreciate that. Thank you. I will. I will. Thank you. And for everybody else joining, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it immensely. So, sending you positive health, wealth, love, and happiness because you absolutely deserve it. Thank you so much. See you soon. Well, there you have it. What incredible conversations with Patrick. Just sharing his highs and lows, the successes he's had in past recent years with committing to running and personal growth and just the small incremental things like journaling, things like sharing his story. And as he mentions, you can have the impact on one person, and you don't know who that can be. You might never know who it is, but he is focused on that because due to the positive impact from other people as well. And I am so grateful that I got to chat and get to know Patrick more and for him to share his story. And I know you saw value from it as well. I'll be sharing his information in the comments below. So thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. If you saw value in this conversation, in this video, please like. If you saw a lot of value in it, please share and subscribe. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.